Welcome to the Scottish Rite Journal podcast, an audio presentation of the Scottish Rite Journal, brought to you by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. This week's article is The Sorcerers Entered Apprentice by Maynard Edwards, 32nd degree, KCCH, and comes from the January-February 2021 issue of the Scottish Rite Journal. In March of 1904, a not-too-tall American man with an untidy mop of dark, wavy hair and hypnotic gray eyes arrived in London to begin a 6-week run at the famed Hippodrome Theatre. His presence was heralded in the streets with vibrantly colored handbills and posters plastered to virtually every flat surface, all displaying a single name: Houdini. Born Erich Weiss in Budapest in 1874, Houdini was the son of a rabbi and one of 7 children. In 1874, the family first emigrated to Wisconsin and then to New York City in 1887. Young Erich became a professional magician in 1891, adopting the stage name of Harry Houdini. Houdini took to the Coney Island stage with his brother Dash under the name the Houdini Brothers. But in 1894, Harry met fellow performer Wilhelmina Bess Ronner, whom he would marry. She replaced Dash as Harry's on-stage assistant, a role she would maintain throughout his career. Houdini had at times billed himself as the King of Cards, but by contemporary accounts, he was not a particularly skilled sleight-of-hand artist. He began experimenting with escape acts, particularly handcuff escapes, which finally landed him his big break in 1899 when he and Bess were booked as the Houdinis on a major European vaudeville circuit. Within months, the newly dubbed Handcuff King was selling out major houses and earning an unheard-of sum of $300 a week. By mid-March, the year 1904 had already been amazing for the man who would become the world's most famous magician. The first 2 months of the year found Houdini challenging various local police departments to attempt to handcuff or jail him in a way that he could not escape. They all failed. Only 2 weeks into the new year, Houdini had garnered headlines by freeing himself from a Sheffield jail cell that had once held notorious cat burglar and murderer Charles Peace. February found Houdini performing a similar escape in Liverpool before making his way to London, where his legend would grow exponentially. On March 17th, at a matinee performance at the Hippodrome Theatre, Houdini accepted a challenge from the London Daily Mirror newspaper to escape from a set of handcuffs specially designed to thwart him. The handcuffs themselves contained 6 tumblers and had taken over 5 years to build. The cuffs were considered virtually unpickable. However, after more than 90 drama-filled minutes on stage, Harry Houdini managed to escape the cuffs. How Houdini managed the escape is still a matter for debate, with theories ranging from Bess having slipped him a key when walking on stage to give him a kiss, to the entire stunt being an act of collusion between the magician and the newspaper. This escape, now dubbed the Daily Mirror Handcuff Challenge, more than all his previous feats, catapulted Houdini to global fame. Over the next 22 years, Houdini would become one of the highest-paid entertainers in the world, traveling the globe to perform his magic and escapes. Whether freeing himself from a straitjacket while hanging upside down in a town square, escaping a sealed milk can, or surviving his infamous Chinese water torture chamber, it seemed that there was nothing that could stop the amazing Houdini. Beyond his escapes and other stage illusions, Houdini became known for his feats of strength and would often allow challengers to punch him in the stomach with all their might, only for the famed conjurer to take the blow with not so much as a whimper. However, on October 22, 1926, a fan caught Houdini unprepared and delivered several powerful punches to the magician's abdomen. The assault is believed to have caused internal injuries that quickly developed into peritonitis. Despite being in immense pain and having a very high fever, Houdini took to the stage in Detroit to perform for a sold-out show on October 24th. Midway through the performance, Houdini called off the show and eventually Bess forced him to go to the hospital. Over the next several days, his condition worsened, and on Halloween night, 1926, the great Harry Houdini died. On any list of famous Freemasons, Brother Harry is sure to be found. He was raised in St. Cecile Lodge, number 568 in New York City on August 21st, 1923. St. Cecile Lodge was, and still is, a daylight lodge, geared specifically towards those in the performing arts who often would not be able to attend a lodge with evening meetings. In 1924, Houdini became a member of the consistory and only weeks before his death was made a noble of the Mecca Shrine in New York City. Houdini was 50 years old when he became a Mason, but his experience in fraternal organizations began in 1903 when he became a member of the fledgling Society of American Magicians. The group had started only the year before with just 24 members in the back of a New York City magic shop. A rift with another prominent member of the club would cause Harry to resign in 1908, but by 1915, fences had been mended and Houdini was from then on an avid supporter of the group. He would be elected SAM president from 1917 until his death. While performing in a particular town, it was often Harry's habit to connect with the local magicians, and there are many surviving letters of his correspondence with fellow illusionists. It may have been such a connection that caused Harry to first mention his interest in Freemasonry. A postcard sent from Houdini to a Mr. A. Buckle in 1904 was recently sold by the world-famous Potter & Potter auction house in Chicago. The typewritten postcard, which sold for $900, reads, "My dear Buckle, am very busy, have a very big task tomorrow, and do not feel very much like writing. Regarding me being a Mason, I regret to inform you that I am not a Mason, and hope some day to belong to that order. I do not belong to any secret club, and am a member of the Society of American Magicians and an artist club in Germany. Regards, Houdini." The A. Buckle, to whom the card was addressed, was 20-year-old Manchester magician Arthur Buckle, sometimes billed as the Manchester Wizard. Buckle's career consisted mostly of private performances and writing for magical trade publications. The relationship between the then 30-year-old Houdini and the younger conjurer isn't well documented, but it would not be a stretch to assume that as magicians they would have made each other's professional acquaintance and become friends. The postcard salutation, "My dear Buckle," and another surviving letter from Houdini to Buckle indicate a personal relationship. The postcard itself is remarkable for several reasons. First, the date of the postcard is March 16, 1904, only a day before the famous Daily Mirror Handcuff Challenge, and the writing clearly indicates the challenge was on his mind. Also, Houdini expresses that he did not feel like writing. We know Houdini was troubled by an unknown illness during the end of his Hippodrome engagement, and not long after the handcuff challenge, Harry was forced to take 12 days bed rest. Does this note indicate he was already feeling ill? Finally, of course, it does seem to be the first documented expression of Houdini's interest in Freemasonry. While the postcard only reveals one side of the conversation between the two magicians, from it we can suppose that Arthur Buckle was a Mason and had asked if Houdini was a Mason, perhaps even inviting him to a lodge meeting. It would be another 20 years before Houdini's interest in Freemasonry would manifest itself into his petitioning a lodge. Perhaps the business of being an international celebrity kept Houdini from joining the Brotherhood sooner rather than later. Or perhaps being an elected president of the Society of American Magicians in 1917 increased his interest in fraternal organizations. We can only speculate as to why 2 decades elapsed before he was raised. Regardless of why Houdini waited until 1924 to become a Mason, by all accounts he was indeed a proud Mason. In 1926, Harry gave a benefit performance for the Scottish Rite Valley of New York before a sold-out crowd of more than 4,000 spectators at the Scottish Rite Cathedral. After his untimely death on October 31st of that same year, Masonic funeral rites were performed at the conclusion of his funeral. A great many vaudevillian performers were members of the craft. As traveling performers, the Masonic Brotherhood would have provided vaudevillians with a sort of safety net while on the road. So, too, the fraternity may have lent some of its dignity to a professional class that it historically had disregarded. Today, the legacy of Houdini and the other magical masons of his era lives on in the Invisible Lodge, a Masonic club specifically for master masons who are also either professional or amateur magicians. Founded in 1953, the club meets annually at the Magic Castle in Hollywood at the stroke of midnight. The Magic Castle itself is a private club for magicians, and members regularly gather to hold a seance in an effort to contact the spirit of none other than Harry Houdini. Any accompanying photographs or citations for this article can be found in the corresponding print edition. The Scottish Rite Journal is published by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. Mark Dreisenstock, 32nd Degree, KCCH, Managing Editor. I'm your host, Matt Bowers.